Okay, so for today, this episode, I'm going to focus on communicating your needs to your partner when you're in a relationship. And the reason why I'm doing this topic today, because I saw a video. I follow a page on Instagram called Black Marriage Movement. And I saw a video where I guess this woman was talking to Steve Harvey and she was explaining how, I always got to tell my husband, like if I want to go on a date, be like, hey, let's go on a date. Or like I want like hugs from him. I gotta be like, oh, can I get a hug? And I kind of just want him to like do it on his own and like know how to do it or whatever. And then the guy was like, oh, well, you married a man, and men don't really understand, like they only hear like 25% of what you hear, and men need repetition. Which I was like, I don't agree with that part of the video. But part of the video I found interesting, and even in when the comments, what this lady was saying is like, she wants her man to just do it on her own, and I'm just like, well, you're not. And I'm here to basically be like, you weren't vocalizing your needs, because you're saying, oh, I want a hug, or I want to go on this weekend, but because you said that, you expect your man to give you hugs all the time consistently, or go or plan dates for you consistently. I'm like, no, it's not how you communicate your needs. All you're doing is just basically telling him like what you want. Well, at least for him and how he's looking at it, like as a man, all he's seeing is, oh, she wants a hug, okay, let me go a hug. Oh, you want to go out this weekend, okay, let me go on this weekend. But in your mind, you're like, oh, he should know that means basically give me hugs consistently, or go out plan dates for me consistently. I'm like, no, you didn't communicate your needs. In his mind, all you said was, I want to hug this one time, I want to go on this date this one time. So what you need to do is communicate your needs. So for example, like in her example, let's use her example. If she wants hugs more consistently, she should say to her husband, hey, I like it when you hug me, or when physical touch is my love language. So can you give me hugs more often? That's communicating your needs. Or if she wants, him to go out on dates, be like, hey, I actually like it when you plan dates for me. Or can we go out on the weekends more often? That's communicating your needs. You just saying a one-time thing of, oh, give me a hug, or that's not communicating your needs. And basically, I'm saying that to like anybody, not just like a man, woman, but anybody. Like, your partner's not a mind reader, especially in you need to communicate your needs, especially during the dating phase. The relationship phase, you can't expect everybody just to know. Like, because I saw when I basically said what I said in the comments, a woman said, why do I gotta explain to my partner why I need hugs? I'm just like, you know how dumb that sounds? You know what you sound like? Why do I have to actually communicate and tell my partner what I want? I'm like, well, how else are you gonna get what you want? It's not a mind reader. I don't know what else. I don't know what else you want. Like, nobody's a mind reader, so you can't just expect people. Like, people be like, oh, I shouldn't have to tell somebody to give me a hug. I shouldn't have to tell somebody to compliment me. Yes, you should. You know why? Because everybody didn't grow up the same. Some people didn't grow up in households where people were physically affectionate. Some people didn't grow up in households where people were verbally affectionate. Some people grew up in a household where doing acts of service is there showing you love you, but not saying I love you was showing you I love you. So you do have to actually communicate that to your partner when you're in a relationship, because not everybody knows. And this is why you listen and vet to the people you talk to and be like, okay, well, how did you grow up? You ask those questions. How do you grow up? What's your love language? What do you like to do? You have to establish these things when you're in a relationship, because you just don't know. Now, to me, after you've communicated your needs, like if you've told your partner, multiple times, hey, this is how, I receive love physically or acts of service, and you've done this like at least a couple of times, and they still don't do it, then yeah, that's a problem. That's a red flag, because at that point, it's almost like they don't really care, because you shouldn't have to communicate multiple times if they say they love you. In the relationship phase, in the dating phase, and that's different. But in the relationship phase, if y'all in a relationship, you shouldn't have to communicate multiple times, because that's how, like, for me, when I was in a relationship with my girlfriend, and like her love language was physical touch and words of affirmation, she only had to tell me that once, and like I didn't have a problem doing, communicating her love language. But for me, acts of service was my love language, and I remember like I had to tell her like a couple of times, and we were in a relationship for 4 months before she dumped me. And out of the 4 months that was in a relationship, I can think of like 3 times where she did like something acts of service related, and like each time's like I had to ask her, hey, can you do this thing for me? And this is, like I said, this is after I've already communicated, hey, acts of service is my love language, so when you do acts of service, that's how I feel appreciated. I communicated at least a good 2 or 3 times, And like the only time she did it is when I literally asked her, kind of like that one situation where I had to ask her on a specific instance, even though I had already communicated that this was my love language before. So at that point, like I said, that person's kind of selfish and they don't really care. So I can kind of understand, if you're married and you've communicated your needs, or your relationship, you already communicated your needs and they're still not doing it, then yeah, I can kind of understand you being like, hey bro, like you just don't care. But this is why, like, y'all should establish like what love languages are. There's a book called Gary Chapman called The 5 Love Languages, and basically they are words of affirmation, physical touch, acts of service, quality time, and gifts. And they sound exactly what the acts of service is. A person receives love by getting acts of service done for them. So if somebody cooks for somebody, makes an appointment for somebody, basically you do something for them. Physical touch is literally physical touch. Hugging, kissing, physical touch. Usually people that have physical touch is their love language, usually have a pretty higher sex drive from what I've seen and from what I've heard. Quality time is quality time. You spend quality time with somebody, so doing whatever, watching movies, watching TV shows, doing activity, hiking, whatever quality time they like, spending quality time is how they receive love. Words of affirmation is usually praising. So, telling somebody you love them, telling them they look handsome or they look beautiful, giving them cards, sending them text messages. That's how they receive love. And then gifts is gifts. Giving them a gift, don't matter what kind of gift. It can be a trip, it can be video games, it can be clothes, whatever gifts, that's what gifts are. So this is why you got to find out when you're dating what your partner's love language is. And then you as a person need to know how to respond in those love languages. And that's why it's a good book to read, because it tells you about the love languages, basically how that person receives love. And it also shows you how to basically do things to show love to that person. And it also tells you what not to do to show to hurt that person. For example, a person that words of affirmation, so they're going to be more sensitive to words. So some people that usually their love language word affirmation, sometimes you can't joke around them with oh, well, I think you're dumb, or that was stupid, or blah blah blah, because they're a little bit more sensitive when it comes to words like that, compared to somebody I don't know, let's say acts of service. You might be able to joke around, be sarcastic like that. Whereas acts of service person, for me, example, you can't say you're going to do something and then not do it, because that really hurts them, because you're breaking a promise. You said you were going to do something and you didn't. So when you don't do that, that really hurts them. And that's for them, that's one way to show that you don't care. So that's why you need to learn what your partner's love language is, and then how to respond, and also tailor your behaviors to not do those things, because if you're going to be in a relationship, you got to communicate your needs. You got to put your pride and ego aside, communicate your needs. Stop thinking everybody's a mind reader, because they're not. And I also wanted to say, when it comes to 5 love languages, they're all intertwined, because some people think, oh, if my partner says this is what their love language is, this is the only thing I have to do. No, all the love languages they're intertwined. And just because somebody has a love language doesn't mean a primary love language. Because when they say language, for example, mine is acts of service, because most people have their primary language too, so they have a primary and secondary. So mine is acts of service, and then words of affirmation. Just because you have those doesn't mean you don't like any of the other love languages. But that's what people be thinking. They're like, oh, well, if your love language is physical touch, I don't need to do anything else. And it's no, that's not how that works. Because all the love languages are intertwined anyway. As a human being, you need all forms of love. It's just these ones, basically love languages, the ones that are your primary, all those really is another way to say is those are ones that feed my soul, that let me really know you really care about me and are paying attention to me and really care about me. But they're all intertwined, because my thing is, for example, you can do quality time and physical touch. So if your partner loves quality time, you can sit and watch a show, and then you can cuddle together while you're watching a show. That's two needs being met right there. That's quality time and physical touch, because you're watching a show and cuddling. If you give somebody a gift, let's say, somebody's gift is, they want a gift, but let's say you want to give them a gift and it's a sexual favor. There's right there. It's getting the gift and it's physical touch, because they're getting the gift, and then the sexual favor is the physical touch part. It's intertwined. You know what I'm saying? And another thing could be, like I said, giving a gift of words of affirmation. If you give somebody a card, you give them a card, it's a gift, but then the card talks about all the things you love about them and how you think they're a great person and all that. they're intertwined. So that's what I'm saying. Like, the love languages are intertwined. They're not like separate things. Like, they're not separate instances or whatever. Because me personally, this is just my personal bias, I think acts of service is like one of the easiest ones to fulfill, because literally anything could be considered an act of service. Anything you do, like, I mean, obviously there's like the normal society says like cooking and cleaning, but literally sexual favors can be considered an act of service. Giving somebody a gift can be considered an act of service. Like, for example, if you give somebody something that's practical that they use, that's a gift, but also it's an act of service. Like, what else is there? Words of affirmation can be considered act of service. Or they're like, oh, I need some comfort, or can you help me with this? And they comfort you. So to me, like, that's what I said. All the love languages are intertwined. Like, they're not separate. And just because somebody has a primary love language of what they want, like, that doesn't mean ignore the rest of the love languages, because that's like I said, that's what people do sometimes. So yeah, that's all I really wanted to say. Like, communicate your needs to your partner, because your partner's not a mind reader. So communicate your needs, and then, to the partners, like, once they communicate your needs, don't basically sit there and forget or think it's not important. Like, you can't be selfish and think, oh, only what matters is how my love language is and how I filled up. Like, you have to keep in mind, if you really care for that person, that's the thing. If you really care for that person, you won't they won't have to keep reminding you a bajillion times. Because even if, like, say your love language isn't their love language, it isn't their main love language or whatever, if you really care about them, you'll try to remember, you'll make an effort. And usually that person will know once you're making an effort, because sometimes, not everybody's perfect, but that person will know, like, if you're making an effort to actually, like, show them and do things in their love language. You know what I'm saying? So they shouldn't have to keep telling you, hey, this is what my needs are. You're not filling up my needs, because then at that point it's like, well, I can understand why a person would want to break up or not be with you, because you basically are selfish and not caring about their needs while only caring about yours. So that's all. Don't really have anything else to say. Hope y'all have a good rest of your day. Hope your relationships are peaceful and they prosper. All right, peace out.